Oh, well, hello, I'm the wonderful, beautiful Rose. Season 1 for beautiful Rose, guys. Of the wonderful, beautiful Maverick, and the dark, the shadow of the Maverick, and the arch of the Maverick. Oh, God, that felt good. My neck there. Anyways, basically, I'm here to bring you guys a little something. Possibly very unexpected, but I think I could have some ridiculous amount of fun with this. Something along the lines of the guy had Chris What If, like something that's just automatic, like off the handle, like cray cray. But the cray cray in this is gonna be like different ish from the cray cray in the guy had Chris What If. That one I just kept on stabbing on like all sorts of shit. This one's gonna be like a crossover of with like Naruto, Bleach, MHA, and High School DxD, and Undertale slash Deltarune. Yeah. Naruto, My Hero Academia, Bleach, basically Naruto, My Hero Academia, Bleach, and High School DxD. Oh, and also Assassin's Creed. So basically Naruto, My Hero Academia, Bleach, High School DxD, and Assassin's Creed, and this is gonna be like a type of what if this is gonna be. It's gonna be like a sort of something akin to like a Daycare what if. Like what if these characters, like ran a certain daycare for a certain character. Like basically, I guess I'm just gonna like stealing ideas now because there was a certain what if, basically a one shot that I'm very sad it was only a one shot because I thought it had real potential to be a series. The way, it was, basically. It was basically a one shot done by Dunkle Dylan in the Hands of Chaos. It was a in particular what if, and it basically had something to do with some sort of daycare setting. Was basically like, what if Izuku was like the reincarnation of like Nightmare Sans? Only in this, it was like only in that it was more like not necessarily that he was evil, but more like keeping the balance. Plus, him and a bunch of other bad Sanses, basically were running a daycare for certain abandoned kids. And I just felt that story was just freaking Gigi no Ri. It was freaking badass. So I decided, why not just add to the madness? I mean, come on, he says it himself. He is the god of chaos. And what's better than the god of chaos than the god of gods to bring you guys an even wackier version, an even crazier version of said story. I might even add some other stuff, later on in the story if, I get the incentive to. I'm already thinking of some stuff that I could add in. But basically, yeah. For now, basically, as I envision it, Basically, what this is wait a second here. Basically, what if to tie into the whole theme of like the fact that they added in, Assassin's Creed. Basically, what if the Akatsuki and Espada Creed ran a Daycare Bad Sans version? Or something like that. You'll know from like the title of the video once you see it. That is, if you're actually looking at it whenever you come across this, or even looking at it now. Let me just think about it. Basically, I think I know what to call it. Basically, what if Akatsuki and Espada create Bad Sans Daycare? Yes, basically, what if Akatsuki and Espada create Bad Sans Daycare? I mean, I don't think there's really only much, better to say it. Basically, how this entire thing would go is, well, basically, as basically things have gone on, seeing as like the majority of the Espada that technically die, and Bleach, we don't really actually see them die. They more or less we see them be defeated, but the majority of them we don't technically really see them die, or even really know if they're actually truly dead. And even if they were even remotely close to that, there are certain indeed ways that you could possibly, either reverse the process of whatever happened to them or is happening to them currently. So, technically, basically, in the case of the Akatsuki, you have two different ways of bringing people back from the dead. And technically, one of those ways actually brings them back from the dead, actually more or less undead than the other way. And what I'm talking about is basically the difference in between being brought back from the dead via rebirth against being brought back from the dead via Tensai. And let's not to say that, well, let's just say, well, towards the ends of Naruto's and Sasuke's lives, they kind of have a lot of shit to reflect on. And actually, even towards the end of like Sai's life, like I'm having Sai in this story. Remember the guy who was like underneath Donzo? Yeah, he had his own little redemption thing going on. Sai actually, it turns out, did have some like human decency and understanding of emotion. It was just like suppressed and like really screwed over by Donzo. Prick that he is. Don't call him the old warlock for nothing. Basically, what if like at the like towards the end of Naruto, Sasuke's, and Sai's lives, they were basically just all reflecting on the entire ordeal, and well, as they were all reflecting on everything, basically, what if like at the very like tail end of it, they were brought before Hagoromo, and basically he talked to them and he's like, normally I wouldn't do this because it's kind of ethically wrong. Like some people, like a majority of people, would believe it to be ethically wrong. But, the reflections you guys been having, like, it is indeed true that most of the people, like, part of the Akatsuki, you know, weren't exactly, you know, in the most sound mind. Some of them were, pure A grade assholes, but, just because some of them are a little bit of bad weed doesn't exactly mean they can't, find a way to sort this shit out. So basically, in other words, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sai are being given a chance to basically either cast Rene Rebirth, with the power of Sasuke's Rinnegan, and he basically gets every time he needs the stage of 6 pass and all that shit, or use the Edo Tensai, which I don't know which one would actually be able to use the Edo Tensai, but seeing as I don't know which one would actually have the power to do that, we'll probably go more like the path of the Rene Rebirth, and technically since they're in Nagoromo's dimension thingy, that's probably, the better, that's probably, the path that would be more likely to be traveled. And, the guys of bringing these guys back to life, like, I guess a second chance, you could say. Even though this could be deemed to be questionable, Hagoromo would indeed tell them that they would be brought with them into the second life. Like, both parties would be brought in with each other into the second life. However, well, the Akatsuki members wouldn't exactly be all that different. They would be. There's technically these, beings known as monsters. And, well, there's a certain being known as Sans, and there's many different incarnations of Sans. And there are certain Sanses known as bad Sanses, and basically, Agoromo, you know, he doesn't know how he feels about, labeling Sanses after, some sort of, thing like bad or whatever. He doesn't know how he feels about that. All this labeling and shit. Basically. And, what would happen? Basically, yeah, that's basically what would happen. Agoromo, seeing as he had pulled Sasuke into the dimension thingy, Sasuke would be able to basically, without being like having the risk of actually killing himself using this technique, he'd be able to basically Rene rebirth all of them, even the Akatsuki members, much to the chagrin of like everyone there except for Hagoromo, because he's the one who came up with the idea. And well, on the Bleach side of things, basically have a certain drifter, a certain Sexta Espada, not really wanting to rule alongside Neliel and Tia, Neliel to Ardesvalk, and Tia Harabel, basically like the double queen duo of like freaking like all of Las Noches and Huaycamundo in general. The Sexta Espada Grimjow Jaggerjack basically wasn't feeling that life. And so he's just like, eventually, moving around. But, the more you start to move around, the more and more you start to become like, towards the outskirts where there wouldn't be as many, like, hollows to feast on. I mean, hollows still technically need to have like, a food intake, and most of it's either pluses or freaking other hollows. And as there would be less and less, basically, more Grimjow had ventured outward, and technically with no sense of direction. That's basically what he would be doing. And so eventually Grimjow would kind of collapse from like this ultimate hunger pain. A sucker for the ultimate hunger pain, that shit. However, Grimjow wouldn't automatically just, be sent to wherever. Grimjow would basically be subjected to something very kind of special. He would actually be able to know what Neliel and, Harabel were doing at this time. He would actually be able to look upon what was going on in the midst of Las Noches. Basically, as he's been traveling, basically, Grimjow sees that basically Neliel and Tia have been doing their best, but things have just not, been the same ever since Aizen kind of screwed everyone over. And so inevitably, Mundo just kind of collapsed in on itself, taking with it Tia and Neliel. And basically everyone else. And basically, there's just like this tiny little voice in the back of his head, something almost like a flash from memory taken form from the familiarity of a voice, the realization of what the heart truly is. Yes, Grimjow would start to be hearing and seeing multiple different things flash before him as he would just seem to fall into this endless darkness, which also kind of interpreted itself as an endless light as well. It would almost be like some sort of hollow limbo. And eventually, Grimjaw would come before what is believed to be the most powerful being, basically the Soul King. And the Soul King would basically tell Grimjaw that he's taken an interest in, his little rough streak and would like to give him a proposition. And that he might want to hear him out on this one. Because it could indeed be interesting. And, well, Grimjaw, seeing as he doesn't have very much, all that much options, he decides, fine, whatever. And basically, the freaking Soul King also tells him that, along with bringing Grimjaw back from the brink, will also be bringing back all of the other Espada. Well, current Espada as of Aizen's rule. So, basically, Aranuri, basically, Yami, Aranuri, Zalapuro Grans, Lamaru, Grimjaw Jaggerdeck himself, Noyotora Gilga, Okiora Schiffer, Tia Hollybell, and the previous Sierra Espada, Neliel to Artisvonk, and, well, also Bargun Luisenbarn, and the Primera Espada, Gayalta Stark. And they also kind of take along with them the Fraction, which means Apache Samsung and Mila Rose would be with Tia whenever she, reincarnated. Grimjaw's Fraction would be with him whenever he reincarnated. And basically, I forget her name, but she was like the other half of Stark. Was it like Lilith something? Was it the other half of Stark? And they separated. I think her name was Lynette, like the soul fraction of Coyote Stark. Basically, borrowing on all of his fraction. Basically all of the fraction that possibly any Bleach fan could remember from the Espada, rank, all the way from rank 9 to rank 0, because, if Yami had any fraction, basically, like the Espada and their faction, and technically both of the tier Espadas would have their faction with them. So Pesci, Dondo Chaka, they would be with Neliel because they were Neliel's faction. And Apache, Samsung, and Mila Rose are Tia's faction, so basically, but basically also Pesci and Dono Chaka would be there because they're Neliel's faction. Oh, I think I'm not exactly sure, but I think I remember the name of Noyotora's. I think he was either the Soul Fraction or one of Noyotora's Fraction. I think his name was Tesla, which, if it actually is Tesla, oh my god. Holy shit, Kubo. Holy shit, somebody got inspired. Up in here, up in here. So, yeah, basically. And basically, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sai would kind of be like, with the energies we're sensing, there might be more than just one person, excuse me, more than just one person besides us, actually getting the same treatment, but from different sources. Basically, Garoma would be like, yep. Basically, he would know, and the Soul King would know. He would basically give Grumjow the lowdown, like, yeah, there are others that are also getting this treatment, And basically the others, basically, as we know now, Naruto, Sasuke, Sai, Grumjow, as for Bleach, and basically whenever it came to My Hero Academia, well, technically that's where everybody's going to be kind of transported to. So technically, there's nothing really, all that much about that. Nobody really needed to be exchanged from that universe. So, because they're all going to that universe. Anyways, but there were three animes that I said besides My Hero Academia. That's right, High School DxD. And if you guys are wondering if anyone, besides Issei, obviously, Issei, they are going, from High School DxD are going to be going. Rias. Rias will actually get to go with Issei. But, I'm thinking about any rules I should make about Issei's sacred gear involving this what if. Because I do know he has a sacred gear. Yeah, basically, just letting you guys know, there is actually someone who gets to go with Issei out of, the others, basically out of basically Rias's peerage. Basically, her, most recently added one, basically Issei, and she's going with him, basically. So technically, it's the other way around. Instead of Issei going with her, she's going with Issei. Because he's kind of the one being sent, and basically any a partner piece, being sent with him. There being only one, and that one being, of course, Ria Skamori herself. Basically, yeah. So that. And why did I finally decide to basically pull some high school DxD bullshit up in his house? Well, aside from the fact that it finally gets to finally lets me get experiment with some shit. And from what I indeed know about destruction magic, seems pretty freaking awesome. Basically, they're actually the Sanses are going to be running the daycare. Not just that, but basically these Sans actually owns and basically has daycare as their property, and the other Sanses that kind of help with that. Of course, getting that idea from Dunkel Dylan himself. Mr. God of Chaos. But basically, yeah. And this Izuku is basically, his own equivalent of Nightmare Sans. Yep. Izuku is Nightmare Sans. Nightmare Sans is Izuku. It's basically Izuku Nightmare Sans. Basically, all the others, except for the Akatsuki members and the Espada members, and like the people that the main members took with them, like for example Ryusuke Mori, she's not going to be affected in this certain way, but Issei will. For example, here are the ones. The owner of the daycare themselves, being Izuku, and well, he, like I said, basically said he is technically, Nightmare Sans. Naruto is Dust Sans. Sasuke is Horror Sans. Grimjow is Cross Sans. Sai is Murder Sans. Or Killer, depending on which one's more accurate. Issei is Air Sans. Yes, Issei is Air Sans. And basically, the actual members of the daycare, like the children that would be at the daycare, the kind of date in which the daycare would kind of be running, and thus also Izuku's age when compared to all of the other members, basically all the children of the daycare. Basically, any children from any of the students from class 1A, 1B, and general studies, any of them I want to be in there or going to be in there. And so I kind of have to age up Izuku to where he can match to where he'd actually be able to take care of the kids. And plus, also, this would kind of have him kind of set up towards an even age where he would be. And so basically, you might be you guys might be well, Darkside Maverick, what about everybody else? All the Espada and all of the Akatsuki. Well, basically, the Akatsuki and the Espada are kind of be like, sort of like the Daycare's kind of own little creed, like members. It's sort of like Daycare creed of some sort. Like, if anyone tries to like screw over the Daycare or like do anything, because basically these kids were like either rejected by their parents were taken to the daycare because their parents, didn't have the money or didn't have the parenting skill to take care of them. Basically, for a multitude of different reasons, these kids were taken to the daycare. And, well, not only that, but the daycare was kind of modeled, from the mold of an actual church. A building of holy, you know, aura. So basically, you burn down this daycare, you're burning down a church, a building that used to be a church. And, that's a pure good old way to get yourself smoted by God. But also, basically, before that can even really happen, there's a reason why there's daycare assistants. And there's also a reason why there would be, like, just clear daycare staff. And that's not just what like the Akatsuki and the Espada like have. It's also their Fraction which have this role. Even the Fraction of the Espadas would have the role of like staff daycare, like but basically like the daycare assistants are basically like just like the vice captains and like the lieutenants of the owner. And everyone else is just kind of like the like said, staff of the daycare. Like everyone else is just like everyone except for, the main people. And basically, yeah. You guys might be wondering how this would pretty much be going because, some of these people aren't exactly, the most priceless of the gems, basically, the most greatest of saints, like holiest of people. Not like everyone's like freaking Moses up in his house. But in Moses' religion there can't have bacon, so I don't know about that. I don't know bacon. So yeah, basically what happened, that well basically I think that after dying, basically and in the several different ways in which the people that did die actually, died. I think this would kind of like shake them to their foundation and what little they kind of do have of their humanity left, if any. This would, you know, Izuku and his like main people would be able to rein them in if they tried anything. And as for crazy mofos like Hedon, you know, trying to sacrifice people. Izuku would probably just be like, you can sacrifice the people that try to burn down the freaking church, like, like the freaking orphanage. You can sacrifice them. Besides, there don't seem to be really all that much of a shortage of people trying to do that. And, Hidan actually realizing that Izuku isn't lying. Around the time that the Akatsuki actually get around to find themselves in the company of Izuku and, his little friends that he's made, being Naruto, Sans, Sasuke as Horror Sans, Sai as, if I remember correctly, Murder Sans, Issei as Air Sans, and that would leave Grimjow as Cross Sans. Basically, you know, not really liking his odds. Like, immortal or no, you still, not liking your odds here. Especially whenever there was a little bit of a demonstration of their power, straight to anyone who wants to try to, smack talk around his house. So basically, everyone's kind of in line. And not everybody, really hates the idea. I mean, basically, if you were to ask, like, opinions, like, ask the Akatsuki or the Espada first on what exactly their opinions would be. I'm not exactly going to go into the detail of, like, the opinions of the faction. So, yeah, basically, for, like, the opinion of Itachi and Kasame, the Akatsuki, Itachi was always a pacifist, so he'd be glad to help with the whole freaking, thing. He'd be actually glad, very glad to help with the orphanage. And Kasame, technically, he was always in a sort of moral gray area. So basically, he kind of just went wherever the wind, which was Itachi Uchiha, took him. Kind of, just Akatsuki buddies. So Kasame, Itachi likes it, and I guess he'll try it. He's like, if Itachi likes it, I guess I'll try it. I'll give it a go. And they actually find that Sameha is actually pretty chill around the kids. At least most of them. And on account of the other, but like now on account of the other Akatsuki members, there's Hidan and Kakasu, just get them out of the way. Hidan basically being told that he can sacrifice the people that try to, mess with the orphanage. He's just like, oh, this more than makes up for it. Johnson Sama, you will have your sacrifices. But then he's going to stop and like, but only if you do your job. And nice. And Udon would be like, okay, fine, yeah. And Kakazu would just be like, well, I'm freaking 91, so really, what do I have left to lose? I mean, I only have, like, one heart as today. Is like, all my other hearts got blown to shit. So, yeah. I'm, like, 91, so I could die at, like, any moment as it is. So, might as well, like, make the last, of my moments on this earth, worth something. So yeah, basically Kankazu is just doing this because, just because. And, well, whenever it comes to Datara and Sasori, well, Sasori, he is kind of just in his own little world whenever it comes to actually, compassion and what, he actually, thinks about the idea of compassion towards others. And Daycare, being known as the Mad Bomber himself, well, actually does indeed take some talking to, but eventually, eventually both of them end up coming around. Some of them take a little bit more effort than others, but eventually they end up coming around. It's just a little bit of a hassle. And, well, on the whole thing about, Nagato, with all of his Renegon, puppet, look like Yahiko and shit, and, Conan. Well, they were once orphans, in the middle of, the Rain Village, and so they would kind of, feel like the pain that, these kids feel, and so, normally you would think that, Pain slash Nagato being the big bad guy, but, you would think that he wouldn't, but, he sees this and he's like, I just can't. I can't do that. These kids, they're innocent. They're just little orphans. It kind of hits a little bit of a sweet spot to where, Nagato really can't afford, kind of still continuing to do the bad shit. Would be like a heavy load of hypocrisy on his part. And Conan, she basically goes wherever Nagato goes. So, yeah, basically, the whole thing with Zetsu, well, he was taken care of post haste because basically multiple different stanzas. Basically, there'll be multiple different people who knew what you were up to. Yeah, Zetsu's up to no good already, so he just gets annihilated, like wiped off the face of the planet. So yeah, no Kaguya for them. So yeah, and in terms of the Espada, well, Yami, to be honest, well, he's kind of like an immature little kid himself. He has his own little temper tantrums. He's kind of like a little bit of a dopey mind, not always the smartest. He's kind of just like the Heavy from Team Fortress 2. If he had freaking superpowers or evolved around, you know, malevolent spirits slash ghosts. And that reminds me of that one video like Ghost, Ghost, Ghost. That's hilarious. So basically, Yami wouldn't really, be all that, hard to convince. And Stark, now that, Lynette, is no longer been slain, Stark's perfectly on board, he figures that, it should be enough, for, life as it is. And it's not like he has much less of a choice. And whenever it comes to Barragan Louisenbarn, I mean, he's already been pretty humbled by Aizen, so, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer that he would just, he would still have that air of somewhat superiority about himself, while, with the others, but not around the kids. No, he would know. He would be able to behave better than that. Because, that could possibly, impressionabilism, that could possibly rub off on them. and in total wrong way. And as for both Sierra Espadas, Neliel and Tia, basically, they're both women, they're both very compassionate, and they both are very serious whenever it comes down to the wire, whenever it comes down to the time to need to be serious. But they're also very, compassionate and loving. So, they would probably be able to get on with it just fine. Get on board with it just, hunky dory. And Ukiura, seeming as he would still, trying to, get around, basically. Because, right before he died is whenever he, finally figured out what the heart was. And so, right about now is finally whenever Ukiura would finally, just now being able to grasp what he had just now, the knowledge bomb about what the heart actually is. And in doing so, there would actually be a very compassionate side to Ukiura that would actually end up in him being really overprotective. Yes, that's right, you heard me say that. Ukiura, due to his figuring about, the heart through Orihime and Ichigo, even though Ichigo kind of had to kill him in order for that to happen. Orihime had to kind of resign herself with a Princess Peach role in order for that to happen. But it ended up with Ukiura pretty much becoming a, very a type of parent, a very overprotective type, very overprotective. But not all the time, but definitely whenever he feels that, the time, calls for it. The situation calls for it. I guess you could indeed say a worrywart. As if he had any. And whenever it came to Noriatora, people would probably think that, there's nothing that. Remember, I made it Hidan able to actually, fix into this, giving his own reason why he would actually ever do this, because, sacrifices. But what could possibly be a reason for Torah to actually, agree to this? Well, after Kenpachi pretty much puts Noratora in his place, he really didn't have that air of arrogance around himself. And also he didn't really have that air of you know, pure misogynisticness about himself anymore either. So he's less arrogant and it would be hard pressed to actually find a single misogynistic bone in his body now that Kenpachi basically had, basically instead of survivor's guilt, he would kind of have being murdered guilt. Only it really wouldn't be guilt. He'd just be almost constant Vietnam flashbacks, back to back. Just kind of humbling Noyatora for the just it would have been something that humbled him. Finally. Freaking finally. Something that humbled that guy. Get him to shut the hell up. And then whenever we came across Zamari Ruru, basically Zamari kind of just be indifferent to the entire thing. He really would not care. And so he'd be able to, not really have all that much of a personality whenever it came to actually the idea of taking care of these kids, you know. It would just be another job. It wouldn't be like, you know, the whole Aizen-sama thing, where even whenever he was dying by the hands of Byakuya's Bankai, he was freaking shouting about Aizen. It wouldn't be anything like that, you know, he would just kind of be like lukewarm personality-wise all the time. And basically after that, there's like Xyloportal Grands, and, well, you could indeed say, you know, he's very, like, you know, in a certain way enthusiastic about what he would basically end up, you know, be doing. Because, well, I guess, you know, he just, whatever reason he has, you know, it's just what I'm trying to say here is Xylo is weird, so I guess, if anything, it would actually make sense for him to actually kind of have like this excitement, this giddiness about actually dealing with the children. Because, you know, he's just weird like that, you know, unpredictable and weird. You know, kind of like myself. Figures like, I like the number 8, so. And, you know, he's the 8th Espada. Basically, as we come to number 9, Adenieto Adenieri. Freaking Japanese. Damn it. Basically, Araniri would basically be like, it would just be there, honestly. Same thing as Zamari, kind of just be there. And it would be like two of the different ball things at the same time, so it would be like two people speaking at the same time. So it would be like people speaking in unison, like Siamese freaking twins. So I guess that would be one thing that, you know, would kind of, the kids in the daycare would kind of find funny. You know, unlike Zamari, Naraniro would kind of have a little bit of an element of like, you know, humorism to like the idea of Araniro, you know, and the whole thing. So yeah, basically, you know, given reasons for why everything would be, ow, shit, what the hell was that? Ow. So, yeah, basically. Now that I basically, had this, actually, seeing as I haven't actually really gotten to get into the story, besides, you know, just like the introductory shit, I want to call this a part 0, because I actually want to get into the story, so instead of calling this a part 1, I'm going to call this part 0, and then do part 1 later. So, I'm gonna just start to remember because OTI here, you know, whatever. This is. Oh, shit. Anyways. Boom!